Sex workers of Reddit, what is the saddest request/story you have with a client? I once spent an evening with a very old man who had booked me because I looked just like his late wife when she was young. He missed her terribly and just wanted to lie down with me, hold me, and pretend I was her. Another one was a man who was paralyzed from the neck down since a swimming accident when he was 16. He couldn't feel anything other than his face, so we just talked and kissed. I stroked his hair and his face and, of course, provided my boobs for motorboating. He was an artist and he painted these beautiful watercolors just using his mouth and a paintbrush, and he had a little straw he used to control the TV. I remember him saying he was really into Studio Ghibli films at the moment, and we spoke about those. Nice guy. But it was also heartbreaking hearing about how little physical contact and affection he received, how rare it was for someone to touch his face and stroke his hair. He spoke about how hard it is when it's like people are scared to touch you, even loved ones, and friends. I hope wherever these men are these days that they are well, and happy, and are finding the solace and physical affection they need. I can't say that for all my past clients, but certainly those ones. I have so many depressing stories. The first I can think of is an older man. I had just started and was working with an agency. I spoke with the man on the phone and he sounded extremely old, his voice was frail and shaky. Our house was in an average middle-class suburb. He was 79 years old, he used a walker, and was stuck on one floor of the house. He told me his story and it broke my heart. He was married and his wife was out with friends. A few years prior he'd had a stroke, followed by another closely after. This left him unable to care for himself and his wife became his career. She was sick of it and left him to his own devices. I can't blame her for being exhausted, but at least get this man a nurse. His son moved across the country and he missed him dearly. He wore diapers because he'd lost control of his urination and bowel movements after the second stroke. He showed me photos of himself when he was younger and talked about his life. He said the only thing he looks forward to was his weekly phone calls with his son and grandkids. I held him and he cried for 2 hours. I almost broke down with him, but I held it in. Edit. Well, this got more attention than I anticipated. Here's another one. His name was Elliot. He was a doctor, psych. The first time we met, I overstayed because he was so pleasant and easy to talk to. After almost a year of seeing him a few times a month, I learned he has a benzo addiction. Yep, a doctor with a benzo problem. Shocking. He'd been taking 10 to 12 milligrams of lorazepam per day for years and couldn't stop. He became somewhat of a confidant for me. It was a mutually beneficial relationship in which we threw all our emotions on the table. Unlike the rest of my clients, I wasn't acting when I saw him. We talked about my life, my problems, etc. He finally managed to taper and kick the habit as well as quitting alcohol. He was the happiest I'd ever seen him. Around this time I told him I was planning on leaving the business. He was sad but understood, and we planned to keep in touch because, like I said, he wasn't just a client. So I quit, moved away, and I was so busy. I was exhausted but pushing through. I thought about him and wanted to give him a call. I googled him to find his office number to see that he'd passed away a few days before. I lost it, scoured the obituary, searched for answers, and found a post from his daughter. He'd committed suicide because he was struggling with benzos again. It broke me. I still wonder what would have happened if I didn't wait months to get in touch. Thanks for 6 years of friendship, being my favorite shoulder, and the many pairs of socks. Sometimes I think about situations like this one. I'm more afraid of ending up like this than dying. It was heartbreaking. I still think about him sometimes, especially when I'm having a mental crisis about being alone when I'm older. This wasn't me, but when I was stripping, my coworker had an elderly client who would come in and buy her out in VIP for the whole night just to nap in her lap. And since our club was not high-end, let's say, our VIPs were connected, so every time I had a lap dance I'd go into VIP and just see her on her phone with him just napping with his head on her thighs. Our club was only open for 8 hours, 6 p.m. to 2 a.m., and then he'd get up when it was last call, give her a big hug and dip. Apparently, he'd been married for like 45 years, but his wife passed away. He hadn't slept alone since he was 18 years old, and couldn't sleep for crap in his own bed. He'd come to the club and get his sleep there with effing Rihanna booming over the speakers. He slept through all of it. There was a rumor that he bought her perfume that matched what his wife wore, but I never found out if that was true. This just breaks my heart. That's some expensive sleep though. Every night. I have a client who gives me an allowance just to go and see his mom. Absolutely nothing sexual, I just have lunch or dinner with her a few times a week, hang out, and talk. She doesn't live alone, he's got a whole staff to care for her, but she gets lonely. Honestly, if he'd stopped giving me the allowance, I probably wouldn't stop coming. It makes me kind of sad when I think that this dude can afford to spend a lump sum on me but can't afford to lose a day of work to see his mom. Wait, does the mom know what you do though, if you don't mind? Or does she just think you're his significant other? It was first just him paying me for sex and videos. Eventually he took a liking to me and one day had me come over to his mom's house and introduced me as his very close friend. His mom and I hit it off instantly and she had asked him to bring me back anytime. He got the bright idea to start giving me an allowance in exchange that I'd have dinner with her once or twice a week. That's now escalated to lunch/dinner 3 to 4 times a week because I actually like her. I don't have sex with him anymore or really any contact. Twice a month X amount gets deposited into my account and that's it. He doesn't ask me about her. I'm just realizing that I'm probably just staff now, laughing my butt off. Oh, okay, thank you, that clears it up. That's very wonderful/loving yet super impersonal at the same time to read. I'm glad she seems happy, thought to have a good friend with her and you're paid, so win-win I suppose. Hope the dude realizes that he should be the one going out to dinners with her though. An elderly man would come in whenever he'd saved enough money to afford an hour or two. He didn't speak much but always had the kindest smile for me. All he wanted to do was to hold me in his arms and sway gently to the music. Nothing else. After a couple of months he shared with me that he used to do this with his wife before she died and that he misses the intimacy of their moments together. At some point, he stopped coming. I don't know what happened to him, but I will never forget him. A good friend was a dancer in FL and she told me a similar story. This old man, widowed, would come to see her once a month. Gave her $500 for an hour in VIP just to slow dance with her, topless. Nothing more than that. Edit spelling. Yeah, this would be adorable, but the topless element makes it swag. Yeah, I was like, my man. I had a client who was a newbie. He booked me for a dinner date. During dinner, he started crying. He broke down and told me he had just gone through a terrible divorce. It sounded like he still loved her, but she was already engaged to her new man. I ended up seeing this client regularly and things devolved. The ex-wife took the kids out of state. The kids wanted their cat, so he gave them up too. Both his parents were dead, no siblings. He stopped seeing me for a while when he got a new girlfriend. She ended up using him for his money. The last time I saw him, he said he was thinking of moving to Mexico. He wanted to get away. I didn't hear from him and life became busy for me. A few years later, I thought of him randomly and looked him up. I found his obituary and it was a few weeks after the last time I saw him. I think he killed himself and I really feel terrible about it. It really haunts me. I had a science teacher in high school who was just wonderful. It's been 20 years since I had his class, but I still remember tons of lessons he did because he was engaging and enthusiastic. Great teacher. But he suffered from depression, and he was fairly transparent about it, in a way that high schoolers could tell. Not in a bad way, but he would be honest and say, "Sorry, I haven't gotten those tests graded. I've been having a hard time lately. I'll make an effort to get them done this weekend." One day a classmate of mine said he started tearing up in class randomly and he confessed that he was going through a divorce. Years later, he was caught in a prostitution sting, and because he's a teacher, he lost his ability to teach ever, went on the sex offender list. He committed suicide not long after. I will fight for legalization of safe sex work in my state so that this crap doesn't happen again. A genuinely good man and a great teacher is dead because he just needed someone to care about him when he was vulnerable, and our society took everything away from him for it. We need better mental health options too, but I'm just glad that your client was able to come to you for what he needed, even if it didn't heal everything. Edit. So some of the details I remembered a bit off. He wasn't fired, he was put on leave. I think it was a rumor he was facing the sex offender registry, but it's possible he was just facing blacklisting. It was 6 years ago, not 10. Web link. Selling is legal. Effing is legal. So why isn't selling effing legal? George Carlin. It's messed up because if you record the act and claim it's pornography, it's then legal. Well, just know that you helped him in some way. He wanted someone to listen and you listened, heart. Yeah. I don't tell this story for sympathy but more because I think people believe our clients are depraved or abusive and that steelworkers are druggies with no education. That's not the truth. I hate that the accessibility and availability of mental health care is so poor in the US. I hate that men are taught to not be emotional or avoid therapy. I hate that sex workers have few resources and despite being tax-paying citizens, we have no rights. I live in the middle of nowhere, and was always told how sex workers were druggies who had nothing else they could do, and how their clients were abusive druggies who couldn't get anything from anyone else so they have to pay for it. Needless to say, I learned myself that neither of those things are true. Some clients just need affection, or they're in a situation where they are lonely and a woman's company is all they want, or someone to talk to. And the women are doing something that I think should be legal anyway. Never understood why we can work as hard as possible for $10/hour and ruin our bodies, but can't legally offer sex. Sex workers are always hated and talked badly about where I'm from, but I think it's an entirely different industry than what most people think. How can it be illegal to sell something that's perfectly legal to just give away? George Carlin. It was in South Korea. Someone requested me to come in the middle of the night for a very high rate. Arrived there, the guy finally just wanted to take a rest on my knees. I was a sex worker like you, until I took a sad guy in the knee. Oh good, you're finally awake. I had a regular who was an older gentleman. Yes, we did do some deeds, but 95% of the time, he just wanted company. I'd go with him grocery shopping, out to eat, to his apartment to cuddle and watch movies. He'd tell me stories about his family that had passed, stories from when he was a kid, stuff he learned when he got his pilot's license. I was at his funeral when he passed. I'll never forget such a sweet lonely man who just wanted human companionship. This is so wholesome. I would literally watch a film about this. Boy, do I have a website for you. Pornhub? I could not believe you had done this. 10 awards in 11 minutes, there's obviously a market for this. Dark jokes go with dark times like depression and sex worker therapy. The young man who came into a rural, Australia, brothel I was working in. He didn't want sex, he just wanted someone to hold him and touch him. For 2 hours. He barely spoke, but he did tell me his story. He lived on a large station, I'm talking around 10,000 kilometers squared. His parents lived in the farmhouse at the front of the property, and he lived at the other end of the property in a smaller house on his own. Like most farmers, he worked on until dusk most days. He rarely spoke to other humans, and he didn't have time to go out and meet women. I felt sad for him, because this was his life, and he had pretty much lost his social skills. My saddest is similar. This guy wanted me to hold and rock him while he just cried. Like he didn't have another safe place to show emotion. I usually ended up crying too. You guys are doing more for humanity than others who get a lot more credit. Seriously. This is worthy of so much praise. You gave someone their safe space in their darkest hour and let them just be. It's incredibly beautiful. No kidding. Now I want to go to a brothel and just be held. Legit me too lol. There's so much hurt in this world. Bruh, I haven't even touched another living thing in like 4 months. I'll take a high five at this point. I wish that kind of service was publicly available. Demand would be very high. Professional cuddlers. They exist. In Japan, you can go into these places and spoon with a girl for 1 hour, frequently used by people with little time for physical bonding. Japan also has the male version as well, where lonely women can go spoon with a male model. I would pay for this. I just want someone to run their finger through my hair while I fall asleep. Alright, $50. I'll be over in an hour. Kind of sounds like how I've become 7 years after a bad relationship. A hug really puts me at ease and helps me relax for once. I've reached a level where I want to cry when my hairdresser shampoos me before cutting my hair. This is how I feel on deployment/remote tours. When you're away from your spouse for 6 to 12 months, and you don't cheat on them, you go the entire time without physical contact. Sometimes all you want is a effing hug. God, we're touch-starved. Never thought much about it, but I've seen documentaries about children being affected by the lack of touch, lack of attention, care, affection, etc., and makes sense that even as adults we might also suffer from that. 3 guys hiring 3 girls to celebrate the birth of one of the men's first son. Wife was still in hospital. This is sad indeed. I feel more mad than sad. Anger is hurt's bodyguard. My wholesome ass read this and originally thought they hired the women to have people at the hospital celebrating when the baby was born. Are you kidding me? Me too. I thought, oh, that's sad, they don't have any other fur, oh. My reaction verbatim. Lamau, I admire your purity. I expected sad in other ways. But this one is truly sad. After reading the wholesome comments above about people hiring girls to join them just to hang out and play tabletop games, it took me a few seconds to realize what this meant. I remember staying with my wife the full 4 days she was in the hospital when our girls were born. I can't imagine going out and partying, let alone cheating on her. Don't you want to celebrate by, you know, being there with your new baby? My time to shine. This has been posted before, but it's the only thing I have to contribute. So this strip I used to manage had this regular who would come in once a month, roughly. He tipped well, kept to himself, and was polite enough. Every time he came in though, he brought this old school lace nightie which he would get the girls to wear and dance in. He tipped them lavishly as well as paid their hourly rate, whatever drinks they wanted, etc., etc. It wasn't until the 2nd or 3rd time I finally asked one of the girls what the deal was with the BYO lingerie, and she told me that it was his dead grandmother's nightie. So there you have it. The whole time I was reading this, I was thinking, please don't be his mother's nightie. It ended up not being hers, but I have to say I'm just as disturbed. Mankind has surpassed our limits. That guy just went edible too. The whole time I was reading this, I was thinking, please don't be his mother's nightie, and this is why we don't make wishes on cursed monkey paws. Huh. To each their own, I suppose. Or their grandmothers. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to be the first to know about Red Rabbit Reader's new videos. If you like our videos, please like them on YouTube and share them with your friends. We welcome your comments below. Press to start another of our videos.